Nigeria marked the 60th anniversary of its independence on the 1st of October this year. This West African state has recently been in the news following deadly protests against police brutality.
During his Independence Day speech, President Muhammadu Buhari admitted that the country's institutions, including the police, had all suffered general decline.
In addition, institutions such as civil service, police, the judiciary, the military all suffered from a general decline. We need to begin a sincere process of national healing.
Hello, I'm Mubarak Kenya.
And I am Sheila Nilima. Welcome to this week's edition, which will focus on Nigeria, a country marking 60 years since attaining independence from Britain.
This year's independence celebrations in Nigeria were followed by weeks of protests against the Special Anti-Robbery Squad known as SARS, a notoriously abusive arm of the Nigerian police.
All of us are tired. We're tired of the killings, we're tired of the extortion, we're tired of the harassment, we're tired of people that are meant to protect us killing us.
By the way, we are focusing on Nigeria today following constant requests by our viewers in this great African country.
Today we shall also have our weekly update of interesting news and events from across Africa. And before the end of this show, we shall have a look at your comments. So let us know what you think.
Nigeria at 60. Challenges, prospects. Nigeria marked the 60th anniversary of its independence on October 1st. With a population of over 200 million people, Nigeria is the most populous nation in Africa. Nigeria's GDP was $448 billion in 2019, recording the highest gross domestic product in Africa. Nigeria is blessed with abundant natural resources. Indeed, it is one of the world's biggest oil exporters, currently pumping out around 1.4 million barrels each day.
However, Nigeria has not met the aspirations of its population. Nearly half of all Nigerians are poor.
In his Independence Day speech, President Muhammadu Buhari pledged to lift Nigerians out of poverty in 10 years.
Harnessing and optimizing our tremendous human and natural resources to attain our goal of being in the top 20 economies of the world, and in the process, lifting 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in 10 years.
Now, for more on the challenges facing Nigeria and the future of these West African nations, we are joined by Mr. Kehinde Sonola, a Nigerian activist and author, and David Oto, a security expert and political analyst.
Later in the show, we shall also have Ms. Suhaile Zakzaki. Thank you all for joining us today.
Now, let's start off with Mr. Sonola. This year, Nigeria is marking 60 years since its independence. Do you think Nigerians have a reason to celebrate this major milestone?
Sure. If you speak to any of our parents or grandparents, and they'll tell you we've come a long way in Nigeria. However, they just, especially like the young people, feel that we have not come as far as we should have and as we had hoped, simply because of, yes, a lot of it is not just down to the corruption of the Nigerian government, but a large part of it is down to Western corporations who have consistently infiltrated Nigeria and Africa. And the reason is so they can continue to control what is the most diverse, the most beautiful, continent and country on the planet that we feel. Nigeria has everything that it could ever need potentially to be a massive superpower if you want to use it. But everything we've been trying to do progress has been consistently stifled, and that's why the people have now had enough. We are proud to be Nigerian, we're proud of our independence, but ultimately we realize it is now our time to lead by example.
Thanks a lot there, Mr. Sonola, a Nigerian author and activist.
Nigeria's rapid economic growth has not generated sufficient employment, and poverty remains high. According to a 2019 report by the World Poverty Clock, 94 million people live in extreme poverty, with the country ranked as the poverty capital of the world. A Nigerian vents his anger over the state of poverty in his country. Let's take a listen.
We can never be poor in our country except we have poor leaders. selected political gang of perroman.
Over to you, Mr. Otto. According to some estimates, nearly 50% of Nigerians live below the poverty line. Why has the country failed to reduce grinding poverty despite its massive income from oil?
It's very simple. The government hasn't realized that, you know, the building the capacity of the population should not necessarily be throwing money to the issue. It is an issue of governance. You know, the governance system has been, you know, very ineffective. And I think that the rise of the younger generation of the youths, the people that are under the age of 40 in Nigeria today that I see, it's a testament that, you know, the younger generation is taking upon itself, you know, to correct some of the wrongs and to hold the government accountable in areas where it never happened before.
Another challenge that Nigeria faces is widespread corruption. The country has witnessed the failure of successive anti-corruption initiatives by the government.
A report by PwC Nigeria shows that corruption in the country could cost up to 37% of GDP by 2030. A Nigerian activist explains here on the need for citizens to lead war on corruption.
It's so important that Nigerian citizens should understand that corruption is actually the biggest challenge that we have as a country. It's the biggest threat to our democracy. But the truth of the matter is that corruption is not an individual. Corruption is perpetrated by people, and usually by people in power. And that's why it's important for citizens not to leave the struggle against corruption to people in power, because the people in power are usually the beneficiaries of corruption.
Mr. Otto, you earlier talked there about ineffective governance. This is a contributing factor in corruption, which continues to cost Nigeria billions of dollars. Why have successive governments failed to tackle this monster?
The biggest issue of corruption in Nigeria is because corruption, you know, fights back more powerful than the people that want to fight corruption. So you have a situation where, for example, the current government came up with the mantra, the political mantra, that it wants to eradicate corruption. But in order for you to eradicate corruption, you've got to understand that corruption is something that, you know, is within the system of governance, is a culture, is a mentality. You know, you cannot eliminate corruption by simply saying you want to eliminate corruption. You've got to be able to understand why are people corrupt. You've got to do a research and understand the psychology of the reasons why people engage in corruption.
Now, Mr. Sonola, what's your take on the endemic corruption in Nigeria?
I would say again, part of the problem is, let's be honest, entrenched interests, especially from the West, you know, former colonial powers, you know, especially with new neo-colonial practices. They've basically incentivized Nigerian governments to stay corrupt.
Less than a week after Nigeria celebrated its 60th independence anniversary, the country witnessed unprecedented nationwide protests against police brutality. The police in question are members of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, commonly known as SARS. The squad was set up in 1992 as a way to push back a rise in violent crime. According to reports, the British government provided training and equipment to this infamous police unit in Nigeria that is accused of torture and extrajudicial killings. The Minister for Africa, James Duddridge, admitted that British officials had trained officers from the now disbanded SARS between 2016 and 2020. Over the years, the unit has been accused of becoming a brutal killing machine targeting innocent citizens. The protesters against SARS are mostly young people who were united in their grievances regardless of religion and ethnicity.
All of us are tired. We're tired of the killings, we're tired of the extortion, we're tired of the harassment, we're tired of people that are meant to protect us killing us. It just doesn't make any sense. They are raping us. We are tired of everything, and we're not even asking for too much. You put up SARS to protect us, and now the people are saying we don't want it anymore. But we are tired.
why did the Nigerian police resort to violence over the years in dealing with the youth?
You know, this stems back to a systematic problem of obviously, you know, if the police officers are receiving enough of a salary where they don't feel like they need to rob their own people literally for no reason, then that would be one thing, right? I mean, you've got to ask yourself, you know, good, well-to-do Nigerians just walking down the street, being stopped and being essentially asked for a bribe so they are not accosted, that's a problem.
Nigerian security forces have so far killed dozens of protesters during the anti-police brutality demonstrations. Meanwhile, in London and other parts of the world, Nigerians also protested against the police brutality in their country.
For them to shoot unarmed protesters, that is criminal, and people died. Oh my God, these are young people.
How can the response by the Nigerian authorities towards the protests against police brutality be evaluated?
When the people went to the streets requesting for End SARS, which is End the Serious Anti-Robbery Squad, which is a part of the police, it was not just the End SARS that took people to the streets. People have been fed up with the way that other police units behave. People have been fed up with the security system, with other, maybe with the military. People have been fed up with the educational system. So all this has built up to the point at which the young people came to the streets and said, we want to end SARS.
And now it's that time in our program where we bring you news and events from across Africa. What do you have today for us, Sheila?
Thank you, Henia. This week we have a lineup on arts, but before that, the Ugandan Bureau of Statistics revealed that Uganda's agricultural prices have improved by 5% as the economy slowly recovers from lockdown. The increase was attributed to the gradual recovery of normal activities. Financing the agricultural industry was stated as paramount to boost the economy further. Now, still on the economy, the government of Ethiopia has injected a $6.5 million survival fund to the textile and garment industry. The fund aims to prevent job losses to over 2 million jobs, 70% of these being women. The fund will also enable textile factories to keep running and recover from any losses encountered during the pandemic. 19-year-old Elvis Mazwimairi, a budding poet from Zimbabwe, wrote down a poem to raise awareness about COVID-19. The poem, entitled I Am Corona, sheds light on the impact of the virus and gives advice on how the spread can be minimized. Now, a recent study revealed that jazz music takes its roots largely from traditional African music. This is owing to the ability to use an instrument as an extension of one's own voice. The report revealed that in South America, jazz came about from present African American tradition, particularly with folk songs sung by slaves. It is believed that the evolution of these musical traditions led to the birth of what we call jazz. Now, the Anzisha Prize 2020, a premier award for Africa's youngest entrepreneurs, attracted participants from over 30 African countries. Ala Moatamed, a 21-year-old female entrepreneur from Egypt, bagged the top prize. Her business venture provides easy and affordable delivery services for customers. The second and third position were taken by participants from Madagascar and Sierra Leone, respectively. Now we have come to the end of this part. Stay in touch with us through our social media pages. Stick around for what is coming up next.
Nigeria at 60. Challenges, prospects.
Mr. Otto there believes that the End SARS protests in Nigeria are not just about ending police brutality. Now, Mr. Sonola, the recent protests in Nigeria mainly involved young people. Should we expect to see young people using their newfound energy to agitate and demand for accountability in all spheres and at all levels of leadership in Nigeria?
Young people in Nigeria, look, they'll all tell you, oh, my father, my mother, they tell us about how things have not changed, with the, Nigerian airline, the lack of highways, roads, they don't want to be in that position in 20 years' time when they're telling their children the same thing. They want the change now. They see what's happening in America, in Latin America as well, in other places in Africa, in Europe, all the protests that's going on. And they realize that if they don't mobilize themselves now, especially in this digital age with what's happening with COVID, then, they're failing themselves and future generations. And this is the exact time to press home this type of, these type of demands. Because again, that old guard of leadership is, to be frank, dying. And also they're realizing that, they cannot hold on to power anymore. This new generation, they are, so to speak, militant, but intellectually militant. They've all been educated abroad or back home to a high standard, and they realize that they can affect change. So I think this is absolutely their time to shine. I'm very encouraged.
Before the protests against police brutality in Nigeria, the country had also been witnessing regular protests by members of the Islamic movement in Nigeria over the continuous illegal detention of their leader, Sheikh Ibrahim Zakzaki. Hundreds of members of the movement were also massacred in 2015 in what is known as the Zaria massacre. Ms. Suhaila Zakzaki, the daughter of Sheikh Zakzaki, is here with us today. Thanks for your time. The authorities have ignored calls for the release of your dad. What does this say about human rights in Nigeria?
I would start by saying that I don't think the case of my father, when it comes to the human rights excesses that has been seen from this government, from this current government, it's always been something that has existed. It's always been there, the case of human rights abuses in Nigeria. I mean, even with my dad alone, most of the governments prior to this one have either cracked down on the Islamic movement or even imprisoned him at different points in time. The thing is that with this administration, it's probably the worst case that we have seen with the crackdowns on the Islamic movement and on my father.
The other major challenge that Nigeria is facing is the protracted battle with the Boko Haram Takfiri terrorist group. Over 2 million Nigerians have been forced to flee the northern part of the country due to frequent attacks by this notorious terrorist group. A refugee here explains her plight.
Ala batiro ala shirndi ajakce. Abatiya Boko Haram so wonde nande laro isai ala shirndi ajakce. Sare na musalamu me ala am godoni.
Back to you, Mr. Sonola. The Boko Haram is one of the most serious challenges to Nigeria's security. Is the government really unable to defeat this terrorist group?
No, first of all, how is Boko Haram still around? I mean, literally, Nigerians have had enough of them. That we don't understand where this group came from. They do not represent any real Nigerians as far as we're concerned, whether they're Muslim or Christian. And also, how can any group like this be more powerful than a so-called Nigerian army with all of its resources? It's an absolute joke. We have to be clear about the international, support as well as domestic support that Boko Haram receives, where the average Nigerian is sick and tired and fed up with them, but they're not being supported in the northern towns in the country to defeat them. To be honest, we've seen a resurgence in Boko Haram, surprisingly, and no one can explain it. I'll be honest. Has the government taken the eye off the ball since they declared victory? A couple of years ago. I mean, we have the video of President Buhari declaring victory, and yet this group is still around. So I think Nigerians are still wondering that question themselves, like how can they not defeat them with all the resources and the help they've supposedly received internationally?
Now, Ms. Suhaila Zakzaki, Nigeria is marking 60 years of independence, but bad governance has impacted negatively on the country, and consequently, Nigerians are suffering. What needs to be done to solve this problem?
Considering the fact that not only we did not create our own nation. And, if you think about it, of course, we can be okay with the fact that we didn't make our own nation. It was made for us by some people for their own interests. But going forward from the independence, it's not like our people came up with a system that works for the very unique demographic that we have there. It is much more of a case of replicating whatever exists elsewhere and trying to bring it into our own place and say, this is how it's going to work. And I would say that Nigeria is a very failed experiment over the course of these 60 years. With all the changes in the governments, none of the things that have been tried seems to work. And probably the only solution would be that if we were able to actually create a government system that is not one that was given to us, let's say, one by the colonialist or by trying to replicate exactly the case of other places and bring it to Nigeria and expect that it would work exactly as it would work perfectly and everything will be fine.
Thanks for that, Ms. Suhaila Zakzaki, daughter of Sheikh Ibrahim Zakzaki.
Despite all the setbacks and challenges, many Nigerians remain optimistic about the future. In his message on the occasion of his country's independence anniversary, the Nigerian head of the Africa Development Bank had this to say.
We will shine. Now, don't count Nigeria out. I have great hope for Nigeria. With renewed optimism, dynamism, and energy, and boosted by the creativity and entrepreneurial spirit of our youth, we will rise and build a more resilient and sparkling nation.
Mr. Otto, you have the last word. What are the future prospects of Nigeria? Do we expect to see a country that will lead Africa towards progress and development?
I think one of the most powerful developmental index, as we've seen with China, is population. Human capacity is very key in development, especially when you have a younger population. Nigeria has a population, as I mentioned earlier on, of more than 200 million. More than 60% of that population is under the age of 25. That is a huge human capacity that Nigeria has in its hands. And being the giant of Africa, any progress that happens in Nigeria would have a significant, effect on the development index, economic, political, social, of the entire African continent.
Well, Mr. Otto there says young Nigerians hold the key to a prosperous Nigeria. The destiny is clearly in the hands of young, innovative Nigerians.
Thanks a lot for staying with us. As we wind up, it's now time to see what you, our viewers, have in store for us. We had Umar Abba Osman, who tagged us on a post on Western interference in Africa. He stated, they send their election observers here, and those observers have the power to even discredit our elections. They have every say on it. Why are we not sending ours there? Have we given in to their belief that they are superior to us? On normalization of Israel ties with African countries, we had M. Hussein stating, removing Sudan from the U.S. list of state sponsors of terrorism just for recognizing Israel shows how politically motivated and farcical this list is. It's not about terrorism at all. We also had Motherland stating, the threat to peace forced Sudan to normalize with Israel. We also had Laila stating, the way the U.S. is tying the removal of Sudan from the state sponsor of terrorism list to normalization with Israel is disturbing. It truly is. That's all for now. Thanks for the comments and tags. Keep sharing your views with us. And also tell us what you would like us to discuss. That wraps it up for this week's edition of Africa Today, which focused on the challenges Nigeria is facing as it marks 60 years of independence this year and what the future holds for this giant of Africa.
Now send us your views and thoughts on today's show. Do let us know about the subjects you would like to see discussed here in our show.
On behalf of the entire Africa Today team, I would like to thank you all for watching. Take care and goodbye.